Hey, Coke Scholar family and friends. Welcome to The Sip, the podcast that shares a taste of the Coke Scholars around the world igniting positive change. This season, we're serving up a series of intriguing how-to topics, from how to travel like a pro to how to manage your finances. Get ready! Our vibrant community's unique insights and expert advice are sure to inspire and enhance your everyday life. My name is Jason Shanker, and I'm excited to lead you through this season. I'm a 1991 Coke Scholar, originally from California, and now living in Arlington, Virginia with my wife and 2 daughters. I run a small business doing technology consulting. For those who are listening, whether you're a Coke Scholar or not, welcome! We're glad you're here. For a little background, the Coca-Cola Scholars Foundation is the largest achievement-based and corporate-sponsored scholarship program in the country. Each year, it awards $20,000 to each of 150 high school seniors across the country who share a unique passion for service and leadership. There are now over 6,900 Coke Scholars creating positive change around the world. If you want to learn more, you can visit coca-cola scholarsfoundation.org. To kick off Season 4, Coke Scholars and money experts Kristina Ellis, Justin Elliott, and Bryan Rodriguez share their personal experiences with money, discuss how to overcome the overwhelming feeling that often comes with managing finances, and give actionable advice to improve financial situations. Let's get to know our panelists. After winning $500,000 in scholarships and earning her degrees, our moderator and 2005 scholar Kristina Ellis dedicated herself to helping students achieve a debt-free education. As the best-selling author of Confessions of a Scholarship Winner and How to Graduate Debt-Free, and a former co-host of The Ramsey Show, she now leads College Ninja, a company that guides students and families through college and beyond without debt. Justin Elliott, a 2011 scholar, is a seasoned expert in sales and finance. Formerly the owner of a successful life insurance agency, he helped families safeguard their finances. After selling his agency earlier this year, Justin now consults for companies in the wellness sector, enhancing their financial and sales strategies. As a senior product manager at Nubank, 2014 scholar Bryan Rodriguez is launching a new product in Colombia to enhance financial accessibility. Previously, he was a vice president at Goldman Sachs, leading the financial wellness product and serving 1.5 million people. Bryan is passionate about financial literacy and breaking the cycle of poverty. Now let's learn how to manage our finances with Kristina, Justin, and Bryan.
Hello and welcome to the SIP podcast. I am Kristina and I am joined today by my friends Justin and Bryan. And we're going to talk about one of my favorite things to talk about, which is personal finance and winning with money. So thank you all for being here today. We're so excited to have you part of this conversation. So let's just kick things off and dive right in. Let's talk a little bit about our money stories. I had the honor and pleasure of talking to you guys a little bit beforehand and hearing about your journey with money. And I would love to just start there. Bryan, can you kick us off?
Yeah, of course, no problem. So my money story started from my upbringing. I grew up in North Philadelphia, a pretty impoverished neighborhood. Only about a third of folks graduate high school. So I grew up underserved. But what's funny is I didn't know my socioeconomic standing or my lack thereof financial literacy. And so I went to a private high school and saw that disparity. So it was very much in my face. And then compounded with college, I went to the University of Pennsylvania, where I had a lot of affluent peers who had not only checking accounts, but high yield savings, investment accounts, credit cards. And I started teaching myself financial literacy just because I didn't even know what I didn't know. And I honestly became so interested in it. It got to the point where I began teaching financial literacy in high school, middle schools, and colleges around Philadelphia and fell in love with it. And then years later, I go Goldman Sachs. I now serve and have served the last 3 years as the head of financial wellness. It's a product that serves over 2 million folks in the US, helping them out with their own personal finances. And now moving forward to my next chapter, helping to democratize access to financial resources in Latin America.
Justin, what about you?
Well, my background, I grew up in an upper middle class background, and my dad actually was a stockbroker, but we never talked about finances in our house. So financially illiterate on a different scale. But My mom was a credit card points buff, so I guess we did talk about those things. But I didn't really want to go into finance. I left college. Well, I graduated college and I went into the path of personal development and human potential and life coaching. And I went down that path for a few years. And the company I worked with kind of disbanded, and I looked for what was next. And I went into life insurance, and I ended up learning how to sell, learning the culture of life insurance. I ended up building my own life insurance agency. I managed, worked with my own clients, helped them with finances, but also taught people how to teach finances, right? So taught people who are working with we worked with a lot of working class families was kind of our demographic. And then I recently just sold that agency. And now I work for a wellness clinic. I actually am in Mexico. My wife is from Mexico. So we moved to Mexico temporarily, and I'm working with a wellness clinic here and helping them kind of change their finances and sales model.
Bryan, I relate a lot. I grew up in a low income household and I didn't really know that we were that low income until you get into a more prosperous environment. Then you're like, whoa, you drive that in college? You drive that in high school? That's okay. I'm feeling less good about my little Mustang. But yeah, so I grew up in a low income household. My mom basically told me before I went off to college, you're on your own paying for college, so you got to find a way. So a big part of my story is that I won over $500,000 in scholarships going into college, and thankfully was able to go to school debt free, which is great. But when it comes to personal finance, I think I thought leaving college that I knew more than I did. I was a little bit like overconfident and
Hmm.
learned a lot of lessons kind of from the University of Hard Knocks, like just doing some dumb things. And so that is part of my passion now for personal finance is, a lot of Coke scholars, a lot of people applying for the Coke scholarship are smart people and they know a lot of things, but personal finance, it is so much more than just head knowledge. A lot of it is behavior. So I just love talking about, how to go beyond just details in a book or numbers on a page and really get yourself to take action and win with money. So when it comes to talking about money, a lot of it feels overwhelming. Like a lot of people do not want to talk about personal finance. Why do you guys think that it makes people so uncomfortable?
I think a major reason why it makes people feel so uncomfortable is because people have this personal stigma that I should know, but because I don't know, I'm just going to stay away from it. But what that mentality does is now everyone stays away from it. Everyone pretends like they have it under wraps, and nobody actually knows. It's funny, there's people that work in finance, right? And I think Justin, you mentioned this earlier, that don't actually know about personal finances, have no idea at all whatsoever. So I think why it's so scary, intimidating is because it's difficult to know, where should I even start? Do I start with my budgeting, with investing, with saving, retirement, debt management? There's so many realms within personal finance that is just overwhelming. So people say, you know what, this is scary. I'm gonna take a step back. It is at least the experience that I've had in the past.
That's so good. I think that is like such an important point for people to get is that everybody assumes that everybody else is doing better than them. But I've talked to a lot of people about their money, and a lot of people's personal finances are dumpster fires. Even if they're super successful, like a lot of people don't have it together. So I think it's important to
Hmm.
take away that shame because a lot of people feel like what you said, where they're like, oh my gosh, I'm the only person who doesn't get it and everybody else has it together. So I can't talk to anybody about my situation because that's embarrassing and it's just not true. I've talked to enough people to know that there's a lot of people who feel overwhelmed by it. So if you feel that, you are not alone. How can someone get set up to win financially? A lot of people, especially people listening in college, they're about to start their financial life. How can they get set up to win? And I'll just kind of start by saying that it's really important to develop your vision early on and be intentional. There's so much advice nowadays. There's so much kind of confusion and overwhelm. And then there's just a lot of temptation. You're going to leave college and you've got credit card offers and you've got all these things coming at you. So I think it's so important to just have a lot of intention going in. There's a lot of financial gurus. There's a lot of people who have this certain plan and that certain plan. And so much of it's going to be based on your personality and what really works for you. So I think it's important to read a lot of books and resources and see what's out there, but then figure out what is going to work for you and keep it simple. It doesn't have to be some complicated, 27-step plan. to help you win with money. It can be super simple. So, that's something that I think is important to kind of kick off. But what do y'all think?
think a big thing with financial success is being realistic with how much money you want to make and how much you want to spend. And I think that's like coming out of college, I think I made mistakes there, being unrealistic about how much money I wanted to make when really after college I wanted to explore more and learn more. I wasn't looking to like get a high paying job right away. That's fine. There's lots of people who live fine not making a lot of money in their lifetime, but you have to be in reality about that. And I think being an insurance broker, I had the privilege of like kind of opening the veil of personals, within, 3 minutes, people are telling me how much money they make and how much is in their savings. And you start to learn there's a lot of people who don't make very much money, but I mean, they manage to buy a house, they have $100,000 in their retirement account. It's all about, are you in reality about how much you want to make, how much time are you willing to commit to working, and how much you want to spend. And I think if you can keep those things in par the most, not focusing on the number, is how making sure you spend less than you earn is really the key to financial success, I think.
That's so good. I was just talking to a friend the other day, and she was talking about how much she needed to get her income up in order to reach these financial goals. But then I was like, "Are you on a budget?" And she was like, "No." And I'm like, if you don't start there, it doesn't matter how much more you earn. I mean, I guess there is a certain threshold where it would matter, but the $10,000 raise isn't going to make that big of a difference if you don't know where your money's going now. There are a lot of people who don't earn a lot of money and are still killing it with investing. So, it is being intentional with your finances. What do you think, Bryan?
So, Justin, you mentioned how much you make and how much you spend, but Christina, you just alluded to it now. How much you save is one of the most important things in life, frankly,
Mm,
because and when it comes to a budget, that has to be allocated. And I feel like when it comes to setting yourself up to win financially, it's moving with intention, Christina, as you mentioned, and the fact that don't dissuade yourself from taking steps to improve your financial well-being because you don't feel like you're in the place right now or the space right now to have the surplus to do so. So a lot of people don't save for their rainy day fund, which is just in case that no one knows, have 3 months living expenses saved up in case anything happens to you, you get fired, medical expense, your car breaks down, whatever it may be. A lot of people don't save for that or invest, let's say, in the stock market because they feel as though I don't have enough right now to be doing that. But it could be $10 a week. It could be $5 a week. It could be $10 an entire month. But incrementally, that compounds and goes a really long way, especially when we're thinking about a college population. If you're starting at 18, saving incrementally every single month, over the course of decades, it adds up. And if you put it in the right places where it has passive income, was making money for you and it's collecting interest, your money's working for you. You're doing nothing at all whatsoever. And it's funny when people are dissuaded, I say, hey, but you just went out to dinner last night and spent 50 bucks. What I want you to do is move with some intention. And I used to do this in the past all the time in college. And after I graduated, I'd come with the educated decision of I could go out to dinner and spend 30 bucks right now, or I could put 30 bucks into the S&P 500, stay at home and eat some ramen.
great.
And and it works.
That's so good. I love that concept too. I don't know if y'all have heard recently, it's like been in the news, the loud budgeting, where, when people ask you out to dinner, you're just like more open about your budget, where you're like, it's not in my budget
Mhm.
right now. And I think it's cool because it's like, it doesn't have to be, because you don't have the money or you're super frugal. It's because you're like, I know what I can do if I invest my money and I can build wealth and be successful. So it's cool if you also get around people who are willing to loud budget with you so that y'all can support each other in that.
I love that so much. And with that, I think comes the stigma of being called frugal or cheap or just having condescending comments because you don't want to spend that money. But I promise you, there is no problem doing it. Like you mentioned, loud budgeting, making your priorities out and upfront to your friends, nobody's going to care. I personally, to save money, I go out to bars and I have one drink or I have zero drinks. I'll have a $5 ginger beer. as my friends have $20 cocktails in New York City because that's just not where I want to prioritize my money. And it's okay.
Yes, it's a lot better to actually be wealthy than look wealthy. Like
Hmm.
that is the actual, I think, new standard of cool is having money in the bank versus just like looking like you have it. What would you
Exactly.
say about budgeting? I feel like that is a spot that a lot of people get tripped up. They feel like I'm not good at it. It feels overwhelming. What would you tell people if you just, I don't know, haven't started budgeting and feel kind of overwhelmed with it?
I think a great place to start with budgeting is just looking at your past expenses, analyzing your own behaviors as a start, right? So looking at the history, look at the last month, look at the last 6 months, the last year. Where am I seeing a lot of my spending going? Am I seeing it go to too much to traveling, to Ubers, to eating out? And from there, you can actually say, hey, 50%. And what's great is a lot of banking apps do it for you automatically. If you have a credit card or a debit account, they can actually categorize your spending for you, which makes it super easy. And there's a lot of budgeting apps. Christina, getting back to what you mentioned before about resources, there's awesome budgeting apps that break this down for you. So step one is know what you're spending money on. Step two, Justin, as you mentioned before, how much is going in? So you figure out what's going out and where is it going, what's coming in, and then figure out how I want to adjust that. What are my priorities? What are my goals? So let's allocate some to saving, some to investing, some to my needs. And then after that, what do I have left over? But your budget has to be prioritized based on what your goals are in life. If my goal is paying down debt and saving, I need to allocate a certain percentage of my income to that before I can spend on luxuries. So step one, look at your history, figure out what you're spending. Step two, know how much is coming in. And then three, after looking at behavior, analyze it and reallocate your funds accordingly based on what your priorities are and what you want to accomplish.
That's so good. That leads really well into a question that was submitted by a scholar. And the question is, what's your best recommendation for what percentage you should save and invest in various accounts and buckets?
So for me, and I think this comes from mentality aspect as well, I look anyone that's had a job, you get your first paycheck and it's a traumatizing event because you worked so hard and all this money for some reason is gone. It's like, what happened here? What is Social Security? What is federal tax? What is the state tax? So how I look at my saving and investing is I look at them as taxes on myself that I have no control over at all whatsoever. So they're going to go direct deposit into a saving account, into my retirement account, into my investment account, and I can't adjust them. I make them at the beginning of the year, and that's it. I have to figure out what that surplus is. So what I do personally is it depends on where you live and the cost of living. I live in New York City, so mine's a little bit more skewed because cost of living is so expensive. But let's say 50% of my income goes towards just cost of living, towards rent, utilities, groceries, etc. 20% is in savings, so that's 70%. Another 15% is in my investments, and the remaining 15 is on luxuries and whatnot. But that's once again, it doesn't
And
have to be that strict.
he's forgetting the taxes he's spending.
Oh yeah, that's why that's in the 50%.
Oh, okay.
It's in the 50% because
Oh,
that's
you must live in a
all
shoebox
gone.
in New York then.
Yeah, I know I try to do well, try to do well. But it depends on where you're living. Like you're mentioning, Justin, cost of living can adjust it so much. But based on my priorities, because I'm using so much money on cost of living alone for my necessities, I try to allocate 30% to saving and investing, and then 15% to go out to eat, drink, etc. But that's just what works for me. You got to figure out what works for you.
That's good. I'll chime in and say, I used to work with Dave Ramsey and I do love the baby steps. They're really simple, but they work. And that's just, $1,000 emergency fund. Baby step two is pay off all your debt. If you have any debt, those student loans, knock them out as quickly as possible. Then do a fully funded emergency fund, save 15% of your income for retirement. And I mean, y'all can look up the rest of the steps. But I think the reason they work is because they're super simple and they're easy to follow. And, kind of going back to that, you got to figure out what works for you, right? Something that you're actually going to do. What's more important than having a bunch of, fancy steps or like a laid out 27-step plan is something that you're actually going to execute each month. Like actually taking 15% or 20% or 30% and saving it. That is really what's going to move the needle. So, whatever plan you follow, making sure that you actually do it is most important. Justin, what do you think?
I think to me, looking back, it's all about, again, what are you willing to do and what phase of life you're in. I have a wife, a child. I have one on the way. I'm in a different phase, and I think like when you're out of college, I know guys who I mean saved 60, 70% of what they made. I mean, like they just buckled down. They didn't live out of their car, but they drove the 10-year-old car. They lived on the floor essentially of someone's house that they were renting, or they really hacked it. And I think that can pay off because crazy saving isn't sustainable for your whole life. There's different phases. I always aim for like between 15 and 20% even now. And I think the thing that you amaze yourself with is that you're always going to make as much as you need, right? It's like I make way more money now, sustain four people essentially, right? And 5 years ago that wasn't even the case, and you feel like you're just barely getting by. But you always push to what you need. So if you want to save a lot and then you do it, um, like Bryan was saying, where it's really just kind of a choice you've made and you live by that. Hey, I'm putting 30% of my income aside and I'm not going to touch that unless it's a true emergency, then you'd be surprised what you can do.
That's awesome. That's a good piece of advice. We got another question from Maggie McGinnis, a 2023 scholar, and she said, "What can college students do to set themselves up for financial success?" And I think we've covered a lot of that already, but is there anything that if y'all could go back to when you were 18 or 19 years old that you wish that you knew that would have helped you after graduation be more set up for success?
I think two things. One, as a college student, what you have that older folks don't is time. Compound interest, right? The more time your money is working for you, the better you will be off. So start, no matter how little it is, start investing it, get a high yield savings account, start as soon as possible. That's one. Number two, and I think a lot of people fall into this setback, unfortunately, credit cards. Know how to use credit cards responsibly. And also, the earlier you start using it responsibly with a student credit card, for example, you have a longer credit history. So your credit score will increase incrementally and it'll be fantastic. But no, so for me, I never buy anything that I can't afford. People use credit cards and some folks think it's fake money. That's whatever. And then you take a long time to pay it back and you're paying so much on interest and people aren't reading the fine print on how interest works at all, right? So if I can go all the way back, I would say look into credit cards early on, look into a student credit card and use it responsibly. Whenever I use a credit card to this day, I'm paying off my balance at the end of the month. I'm not carrying anything over because that's what banks want you to do. That's how they make their money. That's why they love credit cards. So just think about how to use financial products responsibly to benefit yourself in the long term.
Yeah, and it's so important to understand. I've literally talked to people who are asking questions about investing, but yet they're carrying a credit card balance where they're paying 23% interest. That is stupid. Y'all, do not pay a 23% interest a month. Like if that's a thing, like deal with that first before you even worry about investing, because that is like the opposite of investing.
I'd say the two things that come to mind, one is a personal bias. Young people don't think a lot about life insurance, and I don't even know if I would have thought about it if I didn't go into the field, but I think having it when you're young and healthy, you can secure a rate that what if you get a health issue later in life or you pick up a bad habit like smoking or something, then your rates are going to be much higher, and that's something you're going to pay the rest of your life essentially, at least while you're supporting a family. You'll most likely have it. So securing a rate, looking at when you're under 25, what does it cost to get $1 million of life insurance? Easily less than $100, and it can also give you benefits that make it easier for you, that prevent you from going bankrupt if you get a major illness, or if you get in a car accident and you lose loss of one of your hands or something. A lot of life insurance policies for free include those benefits. So I think that's something that I'm really glad that I thought of before I had a family, but I don't know if I would have. So I think it's just one of those things people think is for older people. But definitely, if you're thinking of a family. And I think the second thing, watching my friends, the people I think that really were smart and I wish I had followed suit in them is, especially with remote work now, that there's so much freedom location that if you graduate college, you have low debt and you have a decent paying job. If you live in the right area, buying a house is more reasonable than you think. There's so many incentives for first-time home buyers that I have some smart friends that bought houses and more. They weren't living in New York City like Brian and I chose to do. They lived in St. Louis or Memphis, or I know Memphis is getting hotter now, but places that's a reasonable, and then you rent out the rooms to your friends. I'm jealous of those guys because they just made smart just choices and then they rented that house, they bought the next house, and I think to me it was like I was too young to buy a house. It didn't even cross my mind as an option.
Hindsight is 2020.
Absolutely.
That's why we're doing the podcast, right? We're pouring all
Right.
of the all the lessons we've learned into the 18 to 20 something who can avoid any mistakes we've made, right?
Yep, 100%.
All right. So, what is the best piece of money advice that you've received? I think something that somebody told me early on is to work on your mindset around money. So many people have money stories that they don't even realize are like playing in the back of their mind. I grew up, like I mentioned, low income and money was tight. And there's so many stories about like scarcity around money and you've got to be careful and there's not enough. And it's like, it made me as an adult approach finances, probably not in a healthy way initially. So, there's an awesome book called The Psychology of Money, and it talks a lot about addressing your money story and some of those mindsets that can kind of, make you play small with your finances. So I would just encourage you to take time to write out, what is your money story? What are kind of those mindsets that actually can hold you back versus pushing you forward?
I hope this isn't too taboo for the Coke podcast, but I was taught something along this line that money is like sex. If it feels bad, you're doing it wrong. So I think a lot of people, we have so, like what Brian was saying about shame, and people, so like we have so much hate about our job, and spending money can even feel bad. Like sometimes we save up for something, it's $1,000, and then you even feel bad about saving, buying it. But creating value, presenting your skills and your assets to the world, getting paid for them, and paying other people for things that they create and they do should feel good. Like that's what it is to be human, is to live in exchange. So when it feels off, you're doing something wrong. Look for help. Get financial advisors. Talk to your therapist about money. I think money is so taboo. We don't want to talk about it anywhere, but it's like you got to get it out so you feel good, so you can live and exchange your skill sets.
That is the best quote. I'm never going to forget that. What about you,
Chris-
Brian?
Yeah, mine is actually very much along the lines of Christina, what you mentioned. You have to control the narrative around money. So the second that you stop being scared of it and running away from it and start taking control and learning about it and then actively managing your money, it becomes fun. Like, I'm checking my net worth, I'm looking at the performance of my investments, and it's going up. I'm having a good time. It's going down. Maybe it's a little bit of a sad day, but it's okay. But when you actually take control of your finances, you feel so empowered. And the best thing about taking control of your finances and become financially literate is by me doing this. I've been through this entire process from knowing absolutely nothing. I had envelopes of cash around my room growing up because I didn't have a bank account until I went to college. And that was only because I didn't want my mom to find my money and steal it from me, frankly. I was like, I should probably put this somewhere. I've heard of these things called banks. Maybe let me use one of them. But since then, I've been able to also teach people financial literacy and empower them, and they've been able to empower other people. You create a network that's so powerful of just knowledge about personal finances and money and management. And you may have just that one-on-one connection with one person, but I promise you it continuously branches off from there. So take control. Don't let the embarrassment, don't let the stigma hold you back because no one else cares. Like it is on you. And you are fighting yourself, you're holding yourself back because you have this fear of not feeling smart enough or feeling shame, but then you're setting yourself back. Take control. I think that's my biggest advice.
Oh, that's so good. That also leads to another question that a Coke scholar submitted that what's the best resources to learn about financial literacy?
If you have a bank account, such as Chase or TD, or you have an investment account, such as Fidelity, etc., a lot of these platforms, the apps, and the desktop versions have a lot of free resources, a lot of articles that break down, hey, what is a 401k? How do I save for retirement? What is a high-yield savings account? So they're right in front of your face. No one is looking for them. The banks put everything out in front of you so you can see and make educated decisions. Because think about it, they want you to know what a high-yield savings account is, so you open one with them, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of banks have open free resources. And then YouTube is great. When I went through this process, I would find a topic that I knew nothing about, such as 401ks, and I would just YouTube, what is a 401k? And then there would be a topic that comes from that video, and I would look that one up next. What is a traditional 401k versus a Roth 401k? What is an IRA? Like, there's a lot of learning. Just go down the rabbit hole. Just go down the rabbit hole of YouTube, and you learn everything about personal finance.
Let YouTube guide you along. That's awesome.
I'd say for me, I'm more of a tradition. I'm a reader more, so I'd say the books I'd recommend are if what Brian just said was Chinese to you, like IRAs, high yield savings account, the best book for that, I believe, is I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Which that book's just like a manual on all the boring words in finance and what kind of accounts. And I find he's decently objective, how credit card points work, and if you have all those things, but you're still stuck with money, my two books I'd recommend are The Secrets of a Millionaire Mind by Hal Elrod and Happy Money, which I don't have the author of that. I have to Google it. But those two books are more in the psychology of money, how to look at the garbage that you believe about money and to transform it so you live a happy and wealthy life. And that doesn't mean you have multiple zeros on your net worth. It could just mean you're happy with what you have.
That's so good. I love listening to some of Gary Vee's stuff and just some of the reality he brings where he's like, he's got friends that are multimillionaires and they're miserable. And then he's got friends making 70K and they go to all their kids' soccer games and they're living their best life. That's just
Sure.
it's good perspective. If you're more of a podcast person, which I tend to, listen while I'm out for a walk. I was going to say a jog, but let's be real. I haven't been jogging recently. I love like the Money Guys podcast, So Money by Farnoosh Torabi, the Ramsey Show. There's so many good podcasts. There's one that I listened to for a long time. I believe it's Optimal Finance Daily, and they read like a blog article every day, and it's like 5 minutes. And I think that that's great because it's like, even if it feels really overwhelming to be like, I'm going to sit down and take a course about money and learn everything about money the next week, like you don't have to do that. You can just like take a 5 minute nugget each day and gradually over time, you're going to be like, wow, okay, this has completely changed. This is awesome. All right, we're getting close to time. And so let's hit the fast 5 questions, the 5 questions that are asked on every episode. What are 2 apps or websites that you can't live without?
On the topic of finances, I'd go with my Chase to manage my checking and credit card, and then Betterment for my passive investments.
Good. Justin, if I saw a list of your most frequently played songs, what would surprise me?
Oh, I'd say I listened to a lot of the Bridgerton soundtrack. My wife and she got me into that. And there's like some like classical remakes of pop songs. So that's my embarrassing.
That's awesome. I would not have called that.
That's hilarious.
That's great. Okay, the next one is what is your favorite book or piece of art or music that has helped or inspired you? Ooh, okay. I love the book Your Money or Your Life by Ricky Robin. It is so good talking about finances, talking about, what I would do if I were 18 again. It basically is all about financial independence and building your life around that. And it's like if you get that concept at 18 years old and you start really working it, you could literally be a millionaire by 30 and have an incredible future for the rest of your life. So that book, it literally can change your life. Okay. And then what quote or motto do you live your life by? Anybody can answer it.
I think what I was saying is I try and live my life. If it feels uncomfortable, push into it anyway or do it anyway. And I think it's just a good indicator, especially with money. You're finding areas or jobs that it's so easy to not like a job and say like, it's just time to quit instead of being like, what's uncomfortable here? What is it that I don't like about my boss that's a limiting thing? Work through it and then leave it when you're on good terms.
That's so good.
I'd go with rejection is temporary, regret lasts forever. Justin, along the lines of what you just mentioned, I think a lot of people are intimidated or scared of the thought of rejection, so they never try it. But go ahead, be uncomfortable. The worst that can happen is you get a no. Just go for it.
Ooh, it's that whole like do it scared concept. I love that.
hmm
What makes the Coke Scholars Program or network unique, or how has it brought value to your life?
I think it's just been so cool how connected that network has stayed. I know Carolyn has reached out to me multiple times. I've been to networking events when I lived in LA, when I lived in New York City. The first employee I hired, my insurance agency, I needed like an administrative assistance. I just posted in the Facebook thread and I got some leads and I ended up hiring a Coke Scholar, and she's still actually an insurance agent now in my agency that I've sold. So just a really close network. If you ever need help to lean on them, there's always someone who's willing to reach out.
That's awesome. I feel like I've just like met some of the most incredibly talented and amazing people through Coke Scholars, including the staff. And it's just incredible going to some of the alumni events and the conferences, having these conversations. I always feel challenged to do better and to continue to rise up. I always leave so stimulated and ready to like tackle the world. I'm like, I have like, I come home and I'm like, telling my husband, do you know this person's doing this amazing thing? And this person's like changed the world here. And it's just so incredibly inspiring.
It's such an inspiring community, 100% connecting with alumni. I mean, just today, I kid you not, this afternoon, I talked with an alumni about some decisions I was making at work and in my career. Whenever I need to just talk and brainstorm around any life decision, around a quarter life crisis I'm going through, it's typically with the Coke Scholar because these folks are so inspirational, they're so well accomplished that I value their opinions so much. And I've talked to them whenever I'm going through an issue in my career. I'm trying to really make sure I'm making the right decision. I know I can always count on the Coke Scholar community.
All right. It has been so great talking to y'all. I know a lot of people have heard your stories and heard your insights and probably want to connect with you. Where can people find you?
That's awesome. To find me, the best place is on Twitter or X, which is just my name at Justin Elliott and then double underscore.
Perfect. What about you, Bryan?
For me, feel more than free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and we can connect.
Awesome. For me, Instagram, DM me if you want to chat. It's I am Kristina Ellis. Kristina's with a K, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Thank you all so much.
Sounds good. Good seeing you guys.
Thanks, folks.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Sip, featuring Kristina, Justin, and Bryan. For links to their full bios and other things they discussed, check out our show notes at coca-colascholarsfoundation.org. And if you have an extra minute, we'd love for you to rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe so you'll be the first to receive new episodes. By the way, if you know a high-achieving high school senior who's passionate about leadership and service, encourage them to apply to be a Coca-Cola Scholar at coca-colascholarsfoundation.org. 150 students will each receive a $20,000 college scholarship. The deadline is September 30th. Tune in for episode 2 in 2 weeks to hear Coke Scholar entrepreneurs JJ Jackson, Erica Tuggle, and Nathan Sharp share how to start a business. As a small business owner myself, I can't wait to hear it and look forward to joining you. See you next time on The Sip.